Good evening. I'm Tina Gorski. I'm with the Modern Art Museum, and we are so pleased to be partnering tonight with Tarrant County College. Welcome to everyone. I think we're in for a really, really special evening. I want to welcome my good friend, Carlos Rovello, who is professor at Tarrant County College, as well as a trustee for the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum in Santa Fe. He's going to introduce our special guest and get the evening going. So if you'll help me welcome Carlos, please.
Buenas noches, good evening, and thank you, Tina, for your friendship. We began our conversation about December regarding this event. So there has been a lot of phone calls and emails, and Tina just got back from Amsterdam. You went to see a major exhibit, and 5-6 days you were gone, and you are here to be. Thank you for making that trip back. First, I would like again to thank the Modern Museum of Fort Worth for their hospitality this evening. Also, I want to thank our leadership of the Tarrant College, Dr. Dan Lufkin, Mr. Lufkin, Dr. Lufkin, he's in the back. Okay, thank you for being here. And also our VP of Academic, Shannon Adayoga. Shannon is here too, thank you. The Calo committee that have been working for a good while on this project. Tonight, as I introduce a friend, I had to figure out how to make it more special by creating a new vocabulary. Because tonight is about you, Cristina Kahlo. A lot of people came for Frida, but they got Cristina Kahlo, and she is alive. So enjoy it. Enjoy it. We all read about Frida. You need to begin reading about Cristina Kahlo.
Thank you.
How do we describe Christina? Just touch her. Get close to her. She has been in Dallas, Fort Worth since Monday evening, interacting with the students, and she almost ran out of ink because every college student wants to have her signature because they understand the history that is being written here in Fort Worth. We are lucky to be here tonight with you.
Thank you.
I want you to know that. And we're going to see that as we listen to your presentation. So with that, Christina, I'm going to let you say a few words, and then we go and sit. Okay?
Well, thank you. Which microphone is working? This?
It's working.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces, friends, students that were in the morning. We had, I gave a lecture on Mexican photography at the college. And so thanks to them for being here at night. I have personal friends here, and thanks to the museum and everybody for having here Carlos, who organized the whole event with the university, with Anne. And so, as Carlos said, I have been just a few days in Dallas, and all I have received is generosity, and I want to stay here. That's the truth. So in the morning, we talk about Mexican photography, but now this lecture called Kahlo Family Legacy is about photography, but in the line of the Kahlo family, so that you will understand more or less why we have such a passion for images.
So we're gonna make a special request from the audience this evening. This poster will be outside when we are done with the lecture, and we would like for you to sign it, because Christina is gonna take it back to Mexico City, and it will be part of the registered memory of this evening.
Oh, thank you.
It's from us. We usually get her autograph. Now she's gonna get her autograph that we were here, so Christina. So thank you. So let's begin, Christina, with the family.
Yes.
Guillermo Kahlo.
Well, I prepared this image because I will read because my English is not perfect. And as well, I start talking, and I don't want to move from the line I have prepared. But it is a fact that art and photography have been part of my family environment and my life since I was born, before I was born, really. And my great-grandfather, here you can see the names of, no, está bien, en esta. We stay in that. My great-grandfather, over there, I prepare images from each one of the family that makes photography. So we start with Guillermo Kahlo, who was my great-grandfather, in his arrival in Mexico in 1891. And being one of the most important photographers of the time, specialized in architecture. As for those who were in the morning, you know that particular thing. And that will be the beginning of a long-time legacy in images. Later, his famous daughter, the most famous in the family, Frida Kahlo, was one of the most photographed artists by famous camera artists, and she herself, and this is a very little known aspect of her life, she considered the idea of being a photographer like her father. Here you can see over there a beautiful image that was signed by Frida Kahlo as an author. Then my father, Antonio Calo, also worked as a photographer for a short time and created very well-known and beautiful portraits of her aunt Frida. Of all of them, I will talk more in detail later. Then, among my father's children, I am a photographer by profession. My brother Guillermo is also one. And my younger sister, who is an art restorer based in Barcelona, married to Pep Avila, a fashion photographer. This was just in case it was necessary to have more photographers in the Kahlo family. So in the new generation, my son, Rodrigo Alonso, is a filmmaker, and my nephew, the son of Mariana and Pep Avila, too. He recently finished his studies in filmmaking. So, as you can imagine, at this point, photography is a passion for us. And friends like Juan Coronel, that you have heard about him, and Salomon know him. Juan Coronel used to say that at the Kahlo family home, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner talking about photography, and with a camera instead of cutlery. So to talk about the family passion for art and images, it is important to start at the origin. So here we have a photograph of Carl Wilhelm Kahlo Kaufmann, who was my great-grandfather. And all the time that we talk about, or when you hear the Kahlo name, you think about Mexico. But the truth is that the Kahlo name came from Germany, because Carl Wilhelm Kahlo Kaufmann was born in Pforzheim, Germany, which is a place, it's a city that is the entrance to the Black Forest. And here we have the photos of his parents, Henriette and Jacob. And it's important to know this because we make the relation Mexico with the Kahlo name. So he was son of Henriette Kaufmann and Jacob Kahlo, and he arrives to Mexico at the age of 19 years old. And it is believed that when Henriette, his mother, died, her father contracted a new marriage, and Wilhelm decided to move away from the family. That's one version. Another version is that it was the trips from Alexander von Humboldt which inspired him which inspired his explorer spirit. So Wilhelm Kaufmann, still Wilhelm, without speaking a word of Spanish, and at a very early age, he embarked on the cargo ship called Borussia, bound for Veracruz, the port of Veracruz, where he arrived in 1891. Once he established in Mexico, he becomes a Mexican national and changed his name Wilhelm for Guillermo, because he noticed that for Mexicans was really complicated to pronounce Wilhelm, so he changed the name to Guillermo. Until thereafter, he will be known and recognized as Guillermo Kahlo. So 2 years after his arrival in Mexico, he met María Cardeña, his first wife, quite possibly at La Perla Jewelry, whose owners were of German origin too, and where Guillermo used to work at that time. With María, he will have his first 2 children, María Luisa and Margarita Kahlo Cardeña. Here we have the photo of the wedding day of the first marriage of Guillermo Kahlo and the first daughters that he had. I always want to talk about them or mention them because they are little known. In the biographies, we talk about Frida's mother and Guillermo Kahlo and Frida's sister, but they are not mentioned. And for me, that's very sad because I knew them and they are part of the family. No? Sorry. But unfortunately, or afortunadamente, we don't know what to, here it's como complicated because María Cardeña died, giving birth to the second of his daughter. And because of that, Guillermo Kahlo married a few months after the María Cardeña passed away. Yeah. It's okay. So because of that, he will marry to Matilde Calderón. Here we saw Guillermo with his second wife. And with Matilde, he will have Cristina, Matilde, over there, Adriana, and Frida Kahlo Calderón. So Guillermo Kahlo had, in resume, 6 daughters. 6 daughters. So, ya me perdí.
It's okay.
Yes.
El porfiriato.
So it will be in Mexico that Guillermo Kahlo forms a new family and sees born 6 daughters and a passion for what it was his profession and passion for life, photography. So as a professional specialized in architectural photography, and thanks to the high level of his technical skills, he became a very well-known photographer. And one of his principal commissions came from José Slimantur, who was the finance minister during the government of Porfirio Díaz, President Porfirio Díaz. And this contract consists in executing photographs of the monuments and federal buildings in Mexico to coincide with the official event to commemorate Mexico's 100 years of the Mexican independence. So after 4 years of traveling around the country, he built an archive of about 900 documentary images. And it's important to tell you, to share with you, that these photographs that Guillermo Kahlo worked were with an 11 by 14 inches camera for glass plates prepared with gelatin bromide solution. What is really interesting is that here we have the camera, and that kind of camera was normally used for studio photographs, and he take this camera outside for doing these architecture images. Also, he carried the camera, but also these 11 by 14 glass plates. So that was really something complicated, but also it was complicated because Guillermo Kahlo used to have, since his childhood, epileptic attacks. So in the morning I was telling a little story about once he was taking photographs in Chapultepec Park in Mexico City, and he had an epileptic attack, and the man who was around, it was like the, ¿cómo se dice? Guardian of the park, steal the lens of the camera. So Guillermo Kahlo, when he wake up from this attack, he sees that he didn't have the lens, but he keep the body of the camera. So this is written in a letter to Frida Kahlo that belongs to the Washington Museum, Women's Art Museum. And then Guillermo Kahlo, very funny, keeps writing that this was the most absurd steal in my life, because this man has the lens that doesn't work with the body of the camera, and I have the body of the camera that doesn't work with the lens. So, and also, as far as we did know, Guillermo Kahlo didn't have an assistant. But recently, I find also a letter in which, in that same letter, it says that it was my fault because I didn't take with me the assistant. So he used to have an assistant, and that was new for me. So, but Guillermo Kahlo also was very, very meticulous, and the prints were obtained by contact. For those who know about photography, you have the negative, which was 11 by 14 inches, and you have the paper, who was emulsified with dry collodion, and then with, it was like a sandwich, let's say like that. So the quality of the images are just incredible. Here I want to show you some examples of that. Other thing that used to do Guillermo Kahlo was to number the negative and to sign them. So you see here the date of the image. So that's something that for historians is very good, because we know the sequence of the images he took. So photography has established itself in the daily life of the Kahlo family since then. It is so that in addition to his professional work as a photographer, Guillermo also made beautiful familiar images through which we know the image of Frida Kahlo and her sisters Matilde, Adriana, and Cristina from a very early age. It is even known that Frida, being the favorite daughter of Guillermo, sometimes goes with him on his photographic tours, as well as he helped him and learned to retouch the negatives and the prints. More interesting is that in addition to her professional and family photographs, Kahlo made a large number of self-portraits and was definitely a very important influence on Frida Kahlo. So here, for example, I like these two images very much because you can see that in the first image is Frida Kahlo with my father, Antonio, the charrito suit. That was Antonio, my father, and his sister, Isolda. And here we have the date of the image, which was November 26th of 1935. And the other image has the same date. And in this case is my grandmother, Cristina. My name is Christina because my grandmother, my father again, but with a party suit, very elegant, and Isolda also. It's instead of having the Tehuana outfit, she has a dress for a party. What is interesting in this image for me is that it's the same composition as you see. It's like the same angle of the camera. It was the same day. So you can imagine a day in the Kahlo family. It was like, let's take photos, no? Guillermo Kahlo asking the daughters to take photos. With Frida, dress the children with Mexican outfits. And with Christina, with party outfits. Because my grandmother, Christina, doesn't use the kind of outfit that Frida uses, and we will see that later. So that's a day in the Kahlo family. And here we have this image with Matilde. These ones are self-portraits, and I think that the next ones, here you can see how many self-portraits did Guillermo Kahlo. And all these images were discovered in 2005 when they, at the Museum Frida Kahlo, which is known as the Blue House, colloquially known as the Blue House. In 2007, they opened a bathroom, which was in the house, but also some boxes that were around the house and closets around the house, and there were many things inside them, and there they find a huge collection of self-portraits by Guillermo Kahlo. So one of my favorite of course is one because we had the idea that Guillermo Kahlo was like a very unfunny man, someone very, serious, a very serious man. And that photograph made me think completely to have another idea about him. He has the sense of humor to pose as a Greek sculpture, muy prudente, very prudent because he's like on his back, not in his front. But those were self-portraits. So all of this. So here we have this image with another self-portrait by Guillermo Kahlo. And what is very interesting, in these images there are many things that I consider important. First of all, that Frida Kahlo used photography in many cases, as for the painting called My Family and I, or in this case, which is the portrait of Guillermo Kahlo, her father. And look how Guillermo Kahlo used to do that kind of writing, no? And there it says like, from time to time, remember
Me.
Remember the el cariño, the love
From the father.
that I always have for you. So Guillermo Kahlo made that image, put that words, and then give each one of his daughters, each one of his daughters a copy of that photo. And if you see here, we have a painting by Frida Kahlo, which is a portrait of Guillermo Kahlo, and of course she was inspired by a photograph of a self-portrait of Guillermo to do this painting. And in this painting, she made the same thing that Guillermo Kahlo does in the photograph. Yeah, and of course this was in 1950, so Guillermo Kahlo passed away. It was not alive. Another thing that here it's very interesting is that Frida Kahlo says that Guillermo Kahlo fight against Hitler. Something that I don't know why nobody noticed that was not true. Guillermo Kahlo was in Mexico. He never came back to Germany, and he never fought against Hitler. But she wanted, I think, that she wanted to make Guillermo, as Guillermo Kahlo was German, and the Germans were related to the Nazis and Hitler, and so he wanted her father apart from that. That's why she died, but she looked alive. For example, she said that she was born in 1910 with the Mexican Revolution, because that was according to her personal political ideas. But the truth was that she was born in 1907. So Frida Kahlo helped us to make the story, no? So when talking about the Mexican Revolution, at the Mexican Revolution, the work for Guillermo Kahlo diminished a lot, because he used to work for the government of Porfirio Díaz. Precisely the one who hired him was José Limantur, who was the Minister of Finance. And so Guillermo Kahlo, all his work will be diminished, and he will make a living, a family living, because he used to rent his photographs for some magazines, as El Mundo Ilustrado, for example. But he became really sad. And this photograph, which was also discovered at the Treasures of the Blue House, as they want to...
Yeah, Christina, about this particular image, after crying.
Yeah, because first of all, that's written by Frida Kahlo, and it's in German, Herr Kahlo, that is like, in English is Mr. Kahlo, is like Mr. Kahlo in German, and
German.
After crying. After crying. Yeah, and you should see that he looks really sad, and he was, at the end of his life, he was deaf. And in many letters, he mentioned that he had heard noises. I don't. It has a particular tinnitus. Tinnitus. So that was really desesperating for Guillermo Kahlo. So here we have an image of the Mexican Revolution that take away Guillermo Kahlo's work, but Frida Kahlo wanted to be born at the same time that her father lose his works. So,
En Alemania.
yes. So Guillermo Kahlo, as I told you, never get back to Germany. He never returned to Germany. And it was until 2005 that his photographic work was shown for the first time in a retrospective exhibition in his hometown at the Reuchling House in Pforzheim. So here we have the cartel of the exhibition and the book that was entitled Frida's Vater, which is like Frida's father. Yeah. I don't like very much the title because it's like linking Guillermo Kahlo to Frida again, but for marketing questions, the people from the editorial decided to
Cristina,
keep
you want to
that
tell them when you received
name.
the call from the museum, that they called you, they contacted you.
Yeah.
Could you explain how was that conversation?
Yeah. The ones who looked for me was Gabi Franglen and Rainer Hülle, who were the ones who organized the exhibition at Pforzheim and also the book of Schirmer and Mosel. And the first approach was because they want me to lend some photos for the exhibition. So then they knew my personal photography work, and they like it, and they said, "Oh, we want you to design the cartel for the exhibition." And I was like, "With that one, yeah." And I was like, "No, I'm not a designer. I am a photographer." "Yeah, you can do it. We like very much what you do," and so I did the cartel. And later they called me again and asked me to write a text on Guillermo Kahlo's technique. And I was like, no, I am not an historian, and so and so. And but they convinced me, and so I write a text for the book. And that was my first time in Pforzheim. And I was the first of the family to go to the Vatersland again, which was really emotional, and it was really special to know the place where your family came from, no? Because we have to make a recognition of where we come from.
Vamos a hablar de eso más adelante. We're going to talk a little bit more after.
Okay. So we come to famous Frida Kahlo, that was born not with the Mexican Revolution. She was born in 1910. And, let's say that this lie that Frida invented prevailed for many years until a group of German journalists found her birth certificate, and the mistakes in her first biographies was corrected. And one thing that is very funny is that in many of the photographs that are in the Blue House, in these new photographs that were found in 2007, behind the photo, we usually used to put the date of the photo. No, Frida Kahlo when she was 5 years old, or so like that. So many of them are tachadas, scratched, because she has to make to coincide his invention, her invention about the date he was born, that she has to do that. So we know that in the 1926, Frida Kahlo suffers from this tramway accident, and the family life will drastically change. And Frida had to spend 1 month at the Mexican Red Cross due to these multiple fractures in the third and fourth vertebra, 3 in the pelvis, and 11 in the right foot, and this abdomen wound, and peritonitis. So it was really a complicated situation for Frida, of course, and also for the family. So once she was released from the hospital, she had to spend 9 months in a body cast for the spinal column fracture to heal. So it will be Guillermo Kahlo, her father, who was also an amateur painter in his spare time. He was a great aquarellist. No, ¿cómo se dice acuarela? I always
Watercolors.
Watercolor. He used to make very traditional watercolors, but very beautiful. He will be the one who gave her first art lessons to Frida, and also he will teach her this taste for reading and listening to classical music. So with the tools given by her father and an easel that her mother, Matilde Calderón, has adapted to her bed, Frida began to paint. In one lecture I gave recently in New York, somebody asked me what will be about Frida Kahlo if she didn't have the accident. That was a great question. Because the truth is that Frida Kahlo wanted to be a doctor, to study medicine. So my answer was, if she didn't have the accident, maybe instead of being in a museum, we will be in a medical congress or something like that. She will not became a painter. She for sure had studied medicine. So Frida Kahlo, for her first works, used her sisters as Christina. Here you have the portrait of Christina and also a beautiful photograph of my grandmother Christina with Frida, very, very young, both very young. And also Adriana. He will use his sisters as models, as well as some friends such as Alicia Galant. She painted her self-portrait, and one of my personal favorites, known as Self-Portrait in Velvet Dress. This painting from 1926 was dedicated to her boyfriend at that time and long-life friend, Alejandro Gómez Arias. So it is important to mention at this stage that in addition to the personal and artistic influence that she drew from her father, Frida's majority works are based on self-representation. The fact that Frida witnessed her father doing his photographic self-portraits generated in her that self-representation entered in a very, very natural way into her artistic creation. The presence of photography in the house of the Calo Calderón family was constant, and the portraits that her father made of Frida help us to know the character in her childhood and youth. But they are also, and this is really important, the beginnings of a Frida who learned to pose in front of the camera from a very early age. And that will have repercussions later in the conformation of her biography. If here, this is no, la anterior. This is a photograph by Guillermo Kahlo. But later you will see another images of Frida. And I know as a photographer that when you make portrait, for example, I made a portrait of Carlos here, people goes very nervous with the hands What should I do with my hands? And in any photograph I see of Frida Kahlo, she knows exactly what to do with the hands. She's like this, like this. Like she knows how to pose because since her childhood, knows how to be in front of the camera. I'm sorry with my his and hers. That's my problem in English, but I do my best. So when Frida Kahlo married to the already famous artist Diego Rivera in 1929, the Mexican press mentions it as a marriage between a dove and an elephant, referring to Frida's small and fragile body and Diego's enormous body volume. And believe me, I once had the opportunity to photograph Diego's pants, pantalones, and it was like two me's like this, no? Yeah, really, really incredible. So I told you that Mexico was, we have this revolution. So in the 20s, 30s, Mexico was living in a post-revolutionary times, and important changes were taking place in the country and the culture. And Rivera belonged to the Mexican muralist movement that became known internationally as the Mexican Renaissance. So here we have some samples of we have one of Orozco and Siqueiros, and here in the ¿cómo se dice bottom? We have this mural, which is at the Secretaría de Educación Pública in Mexico, and you see there Tina Modotti and Frida Kahlo, ¿cómo se dice? Repartiendo, giving arms to the country, to the people. So things start to come together: art, photography, the Kahlo family, Tina Modotti and Weston, and we go in that line. So the interest in knowing the cultural movements of Mexico generated by the arrival of, will generate the arrival of artists, writers, filmmakers, journalists, and photographers from all over the world. An example of this was the visit of the Russian filmmaker Sergei Eisenstein, and later the French poet André Breton, known as the father of surrealism. In that photo we have Diego Rivera, André Breton, and Trotsky. And they were fascinated by the Mexican traditions and popular art. So Breton expresses that Mexico is a surreal country, and in that photograph we see Sergei Eisenstein with these skulls made by sugar. That in November in Mexico they are very, very traditional, and in the morning in the lecture that I give in the morning, for those who are here again, I was saying that, for example, Alan Glass, who was also a surrealist artist, said that he wanted to live in a place like Mexico where we can see death as a sugar candy, like a sugar candy. So that's why Breton also said that it was a surreal place in Mexico, and Sergei Eisenstein came to Mexico because all that traditions were really incredible for them.
He did a movie.
Yeah, and he made a movie, Viva Mexico, because of all that. So the art of photography will take a great relevance in artistic circles at the beginning of the 20s of the last century, with the arrival in Mexico of the North American photographer Edward Weston and his Italian companion Tina Modotti. Both artists were quickly welcomed into the Mexican cultural environment. So Diego Rivera, who was a visionary in many aspects, published in 1926 an article in which he validated photography as an art of equal importance to any other artistic discipline. In this text, published by the Mexican Folkways magazine on the occasion of a Modotti and Weston exhibition, Rivera writes the following, and I quote, "Today, our sensibility is no longer deceived by the novelty of the camera procedure, and modern men clearly feel the personality of each of the authors in different photographs taken in the same conditions of time and space. We feel the personality of the photographer as clearly as that of the painter, or engraver, draughtsman or engraver. In reality, the camera and the manipulations of the cabinet are technique, like oil, pencil, or watercolor, and above all, the expression of the human personality that uses it persists." So that was really something new, no? This idea, and we have to say that Diego Rivera has an evolution mind. Also, when he started to collect pre-Hispanic figures, sculptures, and so he was one of the first ones to give the value that they have. So during the time that Edward Weston and Tina Modotti worked in Mexico, they would be precursors of the photographic image that holds the aesthetic value independently from its documentary value, and also would reaffirm photography as an art and established a stance on a new photographic realism. So Mexican popular art inspired the creativity of the North American artist, just as well as Weston's influence was forceful for the Mexican photographers. Modotti, so here we have two images by Weston and a portrait of Frida Kahlo made by Edward Weston. Modotti, on the other hand, upon her arrival in Mexico, would have left the profession of actress to become Weston's student, assistant, and model, and his images, particularly from 1926 production, will have a political theme with revolutionary reference to the social and feminist struggle. Two Mexicans to the aesthetic discourse of Weston and Modotti, and therefore precursors of modern photography in Mexico. Manuel Álvarez Bravo and his wife Lola Álvarez Bravo, who, in the same way that Tina Modotti began her photographic career as a student, assistant, and sentimental partner of her husband. Manuel Álvarez Bravo, one of the most well-known Mexican photographers, lends his own aesthetic meaning to every one of his images, always uncovering with beauty in the simplest objects and situations. Here, for example, that image of La Buena Fama Durmiendo, in English would be the good, how do you translate fama?
Famous.
Reputation. Good reputation asleep.
Exactly. Thank you, Salomon. So Álvarez Bravo will have always this kind of joy with the titles, and he plays with the title and the image at the same time. So his wife, Lola Álvarez Bravo, was a pioneer in the creation of photographic collage here in Mexico, influenced by the foreign avant-garde movements as the Russian constructivism, Italian futurism, or the German new objectivity. In addition to her vast archive of portraits of well-known personalities in Mexican culture. So, and Lola Álvarez Bravo, we have to say, was the one one of the first Mexican women photographers that make a living of her own work, of her own photographs. Also, Lola would be the founder and director of the Contemporary Art Gallery in Mexico City, where Frida Kahlo had one of the only 3 solo exhibitions that she had being alive. Now, we cannot do a list of them. They are so much more. But being alive, she only had 3 exhibitions, and one was at the gallery of the Lola Alvarez Bravo, her friend. So in 1931, photography keeps being an important movement, and there was a very, very important event that took place. It was that a construction material company named La Tolteca called a contest in which artists are invited to create works whose subject had to be around its cement factory. Of the almost 500 works that are received in response to the call, 282 were photographs. And the jury, that included, of course, Diego Rivera, who was here and there and everywhere, he was part of this jury. In said contest, the photographer, Manuel Alvarez Bravo, will be the first place winner, and Lola Alvarez Bravo, his wife, will be the 3rd place award. In other words, from the 20s, photographic art will be positioned within cultural spheres, and Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo, being since their marriage one of the most emblematic and representative couples within the Mexican art, generated that many photographers, artist photographers, perform images of the lives of both artists in their peculiar, attractive living spaces. So international photographers came to Mexico and particularly made portraits of Frida Kahlo for her attractive personality, as well as was the case of her personal friend, Lola Alvarez Bravo and Manuel Alvarez Bravo, winners in the contest I mentioned above. Here, I want to tell you that I met Lola Alvarez Bravo and also Manuel Alvarez Bravo being alive. And Lola Alvarez Bravo used to take photographs of Frida. When Frida called Lola, Lolita, please come, I have a problem with Diego. So Lola arrived with her camera, and while Frida is talking about her problems, then Lola make beautiful, incredible portraits, like that one, which is, it remembers us, the 2 Fridas, this famous painting, and that's a mirror in the blue house. So she made a lot of beautiful photographs. That one is from Manuel Alvarez Bravo. And let's say that Manuel and Lola Alvarez Bravo get divorced, but she kept the name Alvarez Bravo. She was Dolores Martinez. And when they get divorced, she didn't want to take away the Alvarez Bravo, because she told me that, look, if take away my Alvarez Bravo name and present for my work like Dolores Martinez, nobody will know who I am, because she was well known, very well known, with the name Alvarez Bravo. And so others, like the Hungarian-born photographer Nicolas Muray, who surrendered to Frida's charms and not only maintained a loving relationship with her, immortalized Frida with his camera for over 10 years on different occasions, making, in my personal opinion, one of the most beautiful portraits done to the Mexican painter here. This image known as the Frida with the rebozo magenta is an image that Diego Rivera himself compared to a work by Piero della Francesca, according to what's written by Frida herself in a letter addressed to Murray. And here we have the expert on that, Salomon Greenberg. I'm so happy to have you here, and look for his book on Frida's letters to Nicholas Murray. The correspondence is such an amazing book, beautiful, printed, and the text by Salomon. So please look for it. And well, one of my favorite books, let's say. So the list of big names that in photography that took Frida Kahlo as a model is very, very long. Giselle Freund, Lucien Bloch, Florence Arquin, Imogen Cunningham, Edward Weston, Martin Munkacsy, Fritz Henle, Silverstein, Dora Maar, Guillermo Dávila, Carl van Vechten, Guillermo Zamora, Berenice Colco, to name just a few, in addition to the Álvarez Bravos, Guillermo Kahlo, her father, and Antonio Kahlo, her nephew, and my father. So Frida Kahlo knew how to pose in front of a professional camera since she was a child, as I told you. But with the same taste, he allowed herself to be photographed by street photographers in traditional fairs. Images of no less value, since they enrich the visual heritage that brings us closer to the painter, and that are samples of her taste for the popular. In the same way that photographic art had a constant presence in the life of the Kahlo Calderón family, it will have the same importance in the life of the marriage of Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. So in 2007, as I have told you, new discoveries were found in the Frida Kahlo Museum and were shown to the world as the treasures of the Blue House. That story was made a little bit bigger than it was, because they said that there was a bathroom which with bricks in the front, so like they have to open this bathroom, and the bathroom has a key. They open the bathroom, and if you visit the museum, in all the closets that you see, there were papers and photos, but they found incredible things as objects, books, clothes, hospital gowns, documents, and photographs, a lot of photographs. And this was remained stored by instructions of Diego Rivera without being shown to the public until then. So among these discoveries, there were found about 3,000 photographs of different subjects and authors, as self-portraits by Guillermo Kahlo, a lot of them. And so we can consider that Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera could be great collectors of photographic images. So now Frida was a model. She also was a collector of photography, and she also, in one point of her life, she considered also the idea of being a photographer. So it is here important to highlight that among these findings, there were these 3 photographs signed by Frida Kahlo in 1929 as an author. These images give us a clue that at some point of her life, she also explored the idea of dedicating herself to photography like her father, Guillermo, and surely influenced by the presence in Mexico of Edward Weston and Tina Modotti and her friendship with Manuel and Lola Álvarez Bravo. But these 2 images are absolutely well composed, incredible.
These were before she married Diego Rivera.
No. That was in 1929.
Nine?
Yes. Well, no, sí,
Yeah.
es antes.
Yes, before.
Yeah, before.
Diego.
And there is the idea that this is a representation of the accident. If you see, that's like Frida lying and carrete with a horse, it's like the car. Here is the... and the three images are signed the same day, so that's the same year. Yeah. So Frida Kahlo knew the testimonial and artistic value of the image, and particularly in her life, photography had a constant presence from different aspects, as we have seen. In first place, when using family photographs as an inspiration for her works, as a collector throughout her life, treasuring images of herself and others. And in many of the photographs, there are kisses printed on them. As a model who posed for the cameras of well-known photographers as well as for unknown ones. And finally, in her momentary intention to venture as a photographer. So, of the 6 daughters of Guillermo Kahlo, only Cristina Kahlo Calderón, the youngest, and who is my grandmother, here she's in a photograph by Guillermo Kahlo, her father, and with a baby in her hands, which is my father. So also my father started to be photographed all the time. So Cristina Kahlo, the youngest, is the only one that will have descendants. And she married at a very young age to Antonio Pinedo Chambon, about whom little is known about his story. Well, I do not have many information about my grandfather. Because as a married couple, they will have 2 children, which are Isolda here in the photo, and Antonio, the baby in the ¿cómo se llama?
Baby walk.
Yeah, and here I share you the only image I have located in which the entire family appears in a photograph taken by Guillermo Kahlo also, and there is a letter from Guillermo Kahlo to Frida Kahlo, where he describes a moment-to-moment this image. Is incredible because he says that that Mr. Pinedo, like very, I think he didn't like Cristina's husband, so he said he feels like the big thing, and Isolda was in a bad mood, so she didn't smile, and he used to say that my father was a philosopher. So, and he said, like Toñito, the philosopher, with his face of everything except of fool, but he said, like, always mentioning the philosopher. And recently, I find also a photograph of my father that is in the collection of the Smithsonian, where in the back, he writes, Bertram Wolf writes that here is Toño the philosopher and Isolda, because the two children appear in the image, Frida's nephews. So that confirms that the, ¿cómo se dice? Un apodo?
Nickname?
A nickname to my father was the philosopher, since he was. So this is the only photograph that I can show you with the whole family together.
And this is the time that Frida was living in America, spending
Yes.
time in the United States, 1932. This we have
So And that's why the letter was written by Guillermo to Frida. And Guillermo used to send the photos to her. So my grandmother marriage to Antonio Pinedo ended when my father was only 2 years old, and that is the reason why I think there are no more images in which they appear all together as a family. The fact is that my father was born with the name Antonio Pinedo Kahlo. That was my father's birth name. But after the separation of his parents, he no longer had a relationship with his father. So at the age of 80, he legally removes the last name Pinedo and kept his mother's last name Calo. Since then, all his legal documents will figure as Antonio Kahlo. This is the reason why my siblings and I legally kept the name Calo. So that's another constant in the family. Wilhelm changed the name, my father changed the name, so it's interesting. But that's why we don't have the Pinedo name, we have the Kahlo name. So Antonio Kahlo, my father, from a very young age, also had a constant coexistence with photographers and artists, beginning with his grandfather, Guillermo Kahlo, and later with the photographers who visit the house of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. In addition to the photographs taken of him by his grandfather, as the last ones, images by Nicholas Murray are known, and I know that, thank you to Salomon again, of Christina, my grandmother, with her children, Antonio and Isolda. That one. And recently, an image of Antonio as a child was found in the Manuel Álvarez Bravo archive, here. The image titled as the boy, and that was just a few years ago that we discovered this photograph, because Aurelia Álvarez Bravo is the daughter of Manuel Álvarez Bravo, and he bring to my house for one launch day the book that recently appears. And that photo was in the book, but they didn't know that it was my father. They put a title as a boy with bear and little camarita, no, in Spanish. And so I was looking to the book, and suddenly it was like, Aurelia, this is my father. And it was, really? Yes, no, and then we started like crying and very emotional, because I didn't know that Manuel Álvarez Bravo took photographs of my father, and she didn't know that little boy was my father, and we are friends. So it's how the stories come together again and again and again, no? And so this beautiful photograph taken by Álvarez Bravo was taken at the house of Frida and Diego, where they lived in Coyoacán neighborhood, and makes it clear that the presence of photographers was constant, and from an early age, photography was still present in children's games with a little camera over there. So as a teenager, Antonio, my father, began to take photographs regularly. However, it is very curious that both Christina, my grandmother and my father's mother, and his aunt Frida were concerned that he wanted to take photography as a profession. As a testimony of what I said, there is a letter written by Frida Kahlo to her friend Francisco Díaz de León, director of the National School of Graphic Arts, in which she asked him to accept Antonio, my father, to study book binding, engraving, or lithography. showing in the letter her concern for Antonio's interest in photography with the following words that I translate here for you. He wants, and here is the letter, the complete letter, and it says, he wanted, just a paragraph about the concern, he said he wants to work in the morning. He is very interested in photography. But you know how difficult it is in Mexico to find a job in that field that leaves you at least for the most necessary things. I beg you to demand that he be punctual and take what he is going to study absolutely seriously. So, in this letter, written by Frida when my father was 17 years old, her refusal to allow Antonio to dedicate himself to photography like Guillermo Kahlo, and like so many other photographers, friends she knew, no, like the Weston, the Molotti, and many others, is tricky, no? But for sure, Frida and Cristina, being the daughters of a professional photographer, knew about the economic difficulties that they went through in their childhood and in the knowledge of the photographers of that time. They knew that photography was a low-paid profession. So as far as we know, Antonio never entered to the mentioned school to study book binding, nothing like that. However, he did work for a time in the field of photography, first as an assistant to the film photographer Gabriel Figueroa. Next page, please. Here, the man behind the camera, that's my father, Antonio. Here is Gabriel Figueroa. And Arturo de Córdoba.
Arturo de Córdoba.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was one of his works, and later for the BSH Bank, documenting in photographs the work that the bank carried out to support of the peasants of Mexico. So, like his father Guillermo, his grandfather Guillermo, and like his aunt Frida, my father also made self-portraits and portraits of family and friends. This is a self-portrait of my father. Then this is my mother, who is now 91 years old. That's me in my father's lens. And however, when he married Elsa, my mother, he gave up the idea of dedicating himself professionally to photography. And in a search of a better economic opportunities, he worked until his early death at the age of 42 years old. My father passed away. He worked in a subsidiary of the RCA Victor, that they make records. But he never stopped taking and developing pictures in his spare time. Our family life during the weekends will also including posing for my father's camera and watching him take pictures. And in my memory, I will always remember him with his Rolleiflex camera in his hands. Like the... Huh?
Ustedes tú?
Yeah. That's my brother Guillermo, and that's me. And these are two friends of the
Family.
childhood.
So ustedes, like, you are the first one here, Christina. Ustedes tú?
No, the third one. That
The
one.
third, the little
The one with como con el moñito, with the ribbon. Yeah. So among the portraits that transcended and that are well known of Antonio Kahlo, my father, are the ones he made in the 50s of Frida Kahlo, images that I personally like because in them you feel the naturalness that gives familiarity. And currently, in addition to my personal work, I'm in this moment organizing also my father's photographic archive. Hay algunas más, me parece. Here with Juan O'Gorman, the architect. Frida without ribbons, without... yeah, that's a beautiful photograph, yeah.
Y aquí estamos ya contigo.
So the first time I entered a darkroom photo lab was with Antonio, my father. And I must have been 11 years old, more or less. And the darkroom that was in my house in Coyoacán, we called it as the secret room, because we were not allowed to enter as children due to the chemicals. So when somebody said something is secret, it's more attractive, I think. So it was like the secret room of my father. So in my memory was of having thoughts since then that when I grow up, I thought at that moment, I want to do magic just like my dad. In my mind, photography was not a technology, it was really magic. Because I could not believe any time, my father said, invite me one day to get into the secret room, and he asked me to put the white paper into the developer, and then this image appears of my brother or me or whatever, he took a photo. And for me this is magic. I remember the smell of the chemicals, the feeling of looking at that. And I think I'm very afortunada. Lucky. I'm very lucky because since I was 11 years old, I knew what I want to do. So later, when I was a teenager, I looked to my friends that I don't know if I study architecture or I'll be a doctor or whatever. I was always clear. I want to be a photographer. So, but I didn't have the chance to learn with my father since he passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Therefore, my first lessons were first with the friend of a friend, you know.
You were 13 when your father...
and later, I entered to the Escuela Activa de Fotografía, which was the only school in Mexico where you could study photography in the 70s. And for my fortune, it was one block behind my house. So it was like I can go walking, and it was fabulous. No, it was like a big present for me when that school appears in my life. Later, I went to Spain to study. First, here is my friend since then, Dornis Doherty, who is an amazing artist. Google her, please. But we studied together in Spain. First, it was like culture and civilization of Spain and Teatro del Siglo de Oro and things like that. And then it goes back to Houston, and I stay in Spain. I was supposed to study history of art. That was what my mother wanted me to study, and that was my first teenager rebellion, because I give all the money to the school of photography, and I have huge problems because of that with my money and with my mother, let's say. So, but I study at the Centro de Estudios de la Imagen in Madrid. So...
Christina, you were talking about the daily scene. This is a picture that has a lot of historical value.
Yes.
So, for those of you that don't know, Alfonso Cuarón is the director of the Oscar winner with the movie Roma. So, Cuarón went to school with Christina. Okay?
Yeah.
And so the next is tell them what happened. You are at the school and
Yeah,
Alfonso,
we were in high school, high school, no?
Yeah,
It's correct. And he was my friend. We were very, very close friends. And we go out every day to go to movies instead of staying at school. That was not very good, but I learned a lot about filmmaking. And one day, Alfonso told me, haven't you never been to the Museum of Frida Kahlo, the Blue House? And I was, no, I haven't been there. My father passed away when I was 13, and I never think about that. And my mother, let's say, she was really busy giving us a life, working, and so she never thought about that was important, taking her children to the Blue House. She was more concerned on working and give us studies and a meal every day. No, it was really complicated. But so Alfonso Cuarón also was studying at the Escuela Activa de Fotografía with me. So we have lessons in the morning, and then we go to the Cineteca Nacional. First, we go to buy some empanadas or quesadillas, and then we go to the Cineteca to see whatever it was important.
How was Alfonso respond when you told him no, had never been?
So he said, so I will take you to the Museo Frida Kahlo, because there is also a coincidence with Alfonso Cuarón. He is his uncle, un tío de Alfonso, was member of the trust of the museum. It was Alfonso Quiroz Cuarón, who was a famous criminalist in Mexico, and the one who promoted carrera.
Racing?
No, la carrera de criminalística.
Oh, the professional.
The professional criminalistic studies in Mexico. So he knows about that, about the family, the Kahlo family, the construction of the museum as museum, because that house where the museum is now, it used to be the Kahlo family house. It was where Guillermo Kahlo lived with Matilde and
so Alfonso took you to the house.
So that day, Alfonso took me to the Museo Frida Kahlo.
And you
That's
told me
incredible.
about you look in the garden and open.
Yes, it was really easy to get into the museum, not like today. If you try to go to the museum, that's a line of 1 hour to if you go on Sunday or Saturday. And at that time, it was like a door closed and you go and knock at the door. That was incredible. And then the gardener, el jardinero, opened the door to you. You want to come in? And nobody was behind you. It was like, it was not as important as it is today. Frida Kahlo at that time was not as famous as it is today. It will become famous, I think, in my opinion, when the book of Hayden Herrera, I don't know, Salomon here, we have the expert, but I think that with the book of Hayden Herrera is when all this Frida Fridomania started. And it started, I think, in the States. And then in Mexico, people said, oh, we have a Frida Kahlo. We should pay more attention. But in the first place, it was, I think, in the States. And now in Germany, they are crazy with Frida Kahlo. So that was the first time I went to the Museo Frida Kahlo with this Alfonso Cuarón. Now he's really famous. And
Tu trabajo.
so here I have some examples of my work. And about it, I can tell you that I create stories for each of my exhibitions. And my images are most inspired by readings. No, I like very much philosophy. Also, novelas like...
Soap operas.
Yeah, not soap opera, well, literature.
Literature.
Yeah, literature.
No telenovelas.
Yeah. So I admire very much philosophers as Bachelard. I think that many of my ideas are on the books of Bachelard and Sloterdijk also. And recently, since a few months ago, more than a year, something like that, I'm very in my focus is Marcel Proust, with all the concepts about time, and so many of my images have been done because of those readings, and I recommend them to you very much. So my personal work has been characterized by intervening the image in many levels, whether it be in gelatin silver prints or platinum palladium prints, cyanotype, Polaroid, or digital photography. Also, I work with hybrid ways because, for example, for me it was really difficult to change to digital photography because I started as a photographer with analog film, developing the magic of the darkroom, and so when I had to do this change to digital, it was like difficult. But I discovered that I can mix both because I can take an image with my digital camera, then I make a negative in a digital printer, and then I print the photo in the magic of the photolab, in gelatin silver print or cyanotype or whatever. So I like very much to mix techniques. So I construct images to express ideas about geometry is something that concerns me a lot because I find in geometry the perfect way to see the light, to understand the light, how the light arrives to a subject. So I use a lot of geometry, constellations, science, nature, geography, travels. I think that they are part of my subjects because I think that life itself is a journey, and we all participate in that. So in that line of work that reflects our movement, time, and poetic things in simple things, we have these images that include portrait and landscape and so. And this portfolio this exhibition was titled Marco Polo is a Metaphor, because I think that we all are Marco Polos. So as a photographer throughout my career, I'll also have work on documentary photography, especially those images that show the cultural traditions of my country, but I don't have samples of that because that will be very much. So also from the line of Antonio Calo, my father, My brother Guillermo, named after our great-grandfather's name, Guillermo, studied communications at the first years at the Universidad Iberoamericana in Mexico City, and once he finished his degree, he handed over his university title to my mother. So here you have the title, and now I want to study photography. So he came to Dallas. That's incredible. He came to Dallas and he studied for a year at the Elkins Institute of Technology. So Dallas and the family here are linked. And it's in his beginnings as a professional, he worked making images for gastronomy books, and for many years to this day, making commissioned portraits like the examples that we have next. So, of my two sons, Diego is a talented chef in Mexico. Here, this is Diego. And my youngest son, Rodrigo Alonso Calo, here. Was Frida Kahlo, my nephew, who is son of Mariana, my sister, and Pepa Avila, my brother-in-law, specialized in fashion photography. Both are enjoying this sequence of image creators, starting now their careers focused in film. Also in my personal career in art, I have also dedicated part of my time to the promotion of photography. Between the years 1983 to 1985, I founded, together with Juan Coronel Rivera, who coincidentally is the grandson of Diego Rivera, the first gallery in Mexico specialized in photography, named as Calo Coronel Photo Gallery. I have also been hired as a guest curator to carry out photography exhibitions related to Frida Kahlo and contemporary Mexican photography, and among other museums are the Martin Gropius Bau in Berlin for the Kahlo section, the photography of the Kahlo exhibition, Palazzo Ducale in Genova, and recently an exhibition titled Kahlo Without Borders was presented last year at the Ellie and Edith Bro Art Museum in Michigan, and the Parrish Art Museum in Hamptons, entitled as Kahlo, An Expanded Body. And these two last exhibitions consist of a more human idea of Frida Kahlo. And these exhibitions that include photographs, documents, objects, and personal letters focuses on the different occasions in which Kahlo was hospitalized, presenting the hospital medical records of the American British Coudray Hospital to the public for the first time, including also images of the original hospital and portraits of her doctors. And it is a recognition and deep appreciation to doctors and nurses who take care of Frida Kahlo in different moments of her short life. Photographs shown in the exhibitions constitute a testimony of the strength of the artist who, confronted with her illness, fought adversity and kept alive her creativity. I want to see la que sigue, por favor. La otra. So here is one photograph taken by Raúl Anaya, which is a very, very strong photograph of Frida Kahlo. After the leg was amputated. And you can see a very different Frida Kahlo of what we are used to see with the ribbons and the rings and like always shiny. No, here it looks very sad. And I wanted to share this image because to close the idea about photography in the Kahlo family, because I want you to think who in that condition would allow a photographer to be in the hospital room after a surgery without your hair done and so. And that makes me think that Frida Kahlo knows the importance of the image as a testimony. So that's why she allowed, in good moments, also in bad moments, a photographer to take the photo, because we see the photo, but we have to think that a photographer was there in the same room, no? So she knows that that importance of documenting and to have images of your.
Christina, you are talking about documenting.
What?
If you could tell us a little bit when you were invited to the hospital to photograph Frida Kahlo.
And so I have to send many letters and to prove that I'm part of the Kahlo family. Because you can't arrive to the hospital and say, here, I'm Cristina Kahlo and I want to see the files of Frida Kahlo. No, I have to take my passport and the family line and everything to prove that I was part of the family. So they showed me these files. It was a very emotional day for me, but also for the people who keep this archive alive. It was really a great day. And they allowed me to take photographs of the files, and for the exhibitions that you see the photographs after, before, la siguiente. Here you can see that I saw the files in, they are in microfilm. So you have to see them in a kind of old TV, and then someone move a little thing, and then they change one to one. Here you can see an image. And I decided not to crop just the file, but to show to the people the same way I saw them. So I didn't crop the image, but I take the photograph of the whole thing, of the whole TV, of the screen. So that's why you see that it's full of scratches and so on, because I want people to experience the same way I did. And that's why I made an installation of light boxes that you can see here. Or in the other one, I think it was in here. En la anterior? Yeah, here. As it was a kind of dark room with files.
So those were the last days of Frida.
Yeah,
Before she passed.
Son los archivos, del año 53 y 54. And also, there is el anterior, please. Otra, here. In this image, you can see the gowns of the hospital, because I had the opportunity to photograph the hospital gowns that were also in these bathrooms, secret bathrooms in the Blue House. And I made an installation because I photographed the dots of the paint
which will be something like
painting.
This that she was wearing.
So you can see that here she is painting at the hospital, and I can imagine that she painted, and then she used the gown to clean the brush. So I make a selection of the colors, and I made also a personal installation. So, well,
El family tree.
well, here is a family tree. And just to finish, I want to say you that growing in this family, as you see, we know of the importance of image as a fundamental part of the narration of our lives, the good and the bad times, as well as a way of personal expression. Art, in all its disciplines, unites people and countries with a universal language. It is thanks to the passion for art that we have been all together tonight.
Christina, there is something here that I want you to revisit. So your grandfather, great-grandfather came to Mexico in 1891, and then you went for the first time, someone from the family, that was 2005.
Yep.
So 114 years apart.
Wow.
So 114 years has passed. When Christina gets invited, and something magical happens there for you.
Well, yes, yeah. I was telling Carlos that since I was in Pforzheim, I think that something gets closed. Something magical happens, because since then I had a grant to live in Basel, in Switzerland.
Yeah, this, yeah.
You, Carlitos. Yeah. Thank you. I didn't know about this.
So you are in
the story is really nice, because I was in Pforzheim for the opening of this exhibition on Guillermo Kahlo, and everything was so emotional. I was in the Vatersland, and so. And there was a woman who has got a real time in Germany, in this same place. And she was asking me about my work, so I had some catalogs with me, and she was looking at them, and she said, "Oh, I want to have an exhibition of your work. It will be so nice to have a Calo back in Germany and in Pforzheim." And so, and I was talking to this woman, Andrea Schumacher, and suddenly a man came to us and see the catalog that was in Andrea's hand, and said, "Whose work is that?" No, and Andrea said to this man, "Oh, it's the work of Christina here." Everything in German, and he didn't know that I speak German. Not very much, but I understand, no, and I can talk a little bit. And he said, "Oh, tell Christina that if she wants to have an atelier stipendium, it's like having an atelier."
Resident.
¿Cómo se dice atelier? A studio. Perfecta palabra. A studio in a grand studio in Basel, in Switzerland. And I was like, she told me that, and I was like, of course, everybody wants to have your studio in Switzerland. But I was really concentrated in the exhibition, so I did not put any attention on that. So he gave me the card, his card, and he said, "Here is my card, so that you can see what I'm talking about, the foundation, the Bartels Foundation, and so on, so on, so." "Oh, thank you very much," and I put it in my jeans or whatever. And a month later, when I arrived to Mexico, I get an email that "Welcome to the Bartels Foundation, and we want you to come," and blah, blah, blah. And I recently came from Germany, so I was kind of, like unpacking, and it was, no, I can't go this month to Germany, to Switzerland again. And this man, let's say, he was born in Pforzheim, but he has a stipendium, or this foundation in Switzerland. So it was really something crazy. And so finally I said, okay, I cannot go this month, but I can go in May. And they say, yes, you're welcome in May. And I went to Switzerland for about 4 months or something like that. And since then, I think I go to, except with the pandemic, in the time of the pandemic, I go 2 times at the year to Europe with exhibitions and so. But always it's like in the same area, no, like Karlsruhe, like the area of Pforzheim. And many things happened since I went to the Vaterland.
So talking about the photography, most of you have seen this image about the migrant mother. This is an image by Dorothea Lange. At that time, Frida Kahlo was living in San Francisco, and Dorothea lent to Frida her studio to paint this piece here, this piece, the portrait of Frederick. So Frida is interesting. We're talking with Christina how while she was in San Francisco, she meets this famous photographer and lent Frida her studio to paint this piece. So, but again, Frida was around you. We're talking about 1930, 1931.
Yes.
So, but the fact is that when you know that story, this image takes another dimension. Because she was one of the pioneers, female photographer, and a lot of her work did not exhibit because that was a very, time in America that. And then this is Frida in the South. Notice this image about the African American sign, the sign here. It's time of segregation. One more here that I want to share with you, then I want Christina to make some comments. It's about this image of Frida Kahlo's real boyfriend, right? Nicholas Murray.
Yes, it's interesting because they have this love affair, but they keep being friends. And Nicholas Murray is one of the photographers that keep on doing portraits on Frida during 10 years in different places and in different times.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually,
this one that we mentioned in the lecture. Uh-huh.
And so let's now bring it to closing. Christine, talk about your friends. And we want to introduce Dornit. That's Christina's friend when she was 17 years of age, right?
Yeah.
That's when you met.
16 or that's
16.
16.
So that, and since then they have been friends, many seasons. We have been talking about Frida's friends. Mm-hmm. Tonight we want to know also about your friends. And Dorney, thank you for being here tonight. And I know Salomon is, by the way, a little background on Dorney about her. Something interesting about Frida, she applied for the Guggenheim.
Yes, and she didn't get it.
She didn't get it. But you did, Dorney, that's great.
She didn't get the Guggenheim grant, and she asked for it.
And also Salomon, he just stepped out, also a good friend of Frida. And the students, I want to show you some of the work that the students of the college did.
Yeah, today.
Today. And this is Christina's photograph work that the student incorporated in this collage. And Piper, are you here? Yes. And this is again another. This is also Frida's Embrace by Emily Contreras. Notice, Frida, the monkeys that often appear, and this by Emily. And I want to thank you to the mother for tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
And we have a special performance, a melody that our friend Abraham Lopez has created for you. Abraham, listo? He's going to play serenade Christina with one melody that.
So thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Ya apareció Calo.
Abraham is the president of the Classic Guitar Association of Dallas. He's from Guadalajara. So from Mexico to Mexico and Fort Worth.
Cristina, me gustaría explicarte un poco sobre la pieza antes de que la toque, pero lo voy a hacer en inglés.
Okay, por favor.
So I was invited to perform a piece to close this event, and I decided to use the broken column painted in 1944 as my inspiration. This is a painting by Frida Kahlo, and I have it right here on my guitar, so everybody knows what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So for this painting that was done in 1944, I'm going to open the piece with a beautiful scale that has one note, then a run of 9 notes, and then 4 and 4 notes representing the year. The piece is in the key of F major, representing Frida. And we're going to hear a very solemn melody, a melody that is very sad, because this is a painting that truly touched my heart, representing brokenness. And we're going to be moving to a piece of Manuel M. Ponce, one of the greatest Mexican composers, and we're going to listen to the Prelude 6 of Ponce. I hope that you enjoyed this piece.
Okay. Gracias, precioso.
Christina, one of the students from the college also did her own body art. You want to show the audience?
I recreated the painting of the broken column on my own body. It took a lot of work.
Wow, súper. Con los clavos siempre aquí. Here, all the,
Yeah.
¿cómo se llaman clavos? ¿Cómo dices clavos?
Nails. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I did
Yes,
a couple
yes,
little
yes.
ones,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
And
Wow.
this is also,
And my, that collage that I made.
Sí. Muy bien.
one of you.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you,
súper honor,
Piper.
eh.
Thank you, Piper.
Thank you,
Oh,
thank you,
Chris-
Piper.
Christina, I think we are at the end, but you told me that you want to do a toast to the audience.
Ah, yes.
So we have your tequila here.
I see. What are the glasses for?
The glasses were for you. So, but I want to say that we have these glasses and this beautiful set here due to someone that adores you a lot, and that's my wife, Dr. Cherry Di
Yes,
Romero.
super Cherry.
Thank you, Cherry. Thank you.
She's in everything. She thinks about everything. They need the glasses, the tequila, the...
So I let you toast to the audience?
Yes, if you have any question, whatever, I'm here.
To your friends, your new friends?
for all of you and my new friends and very, very old friends.
Salud.
And thank you very much, Carlos. Thank you, Sherry.
Okay. It's almost midnight, so we have to. But you
¿Qué horas son?
if you have some questions, maybe you
Está
can
muy
take
bien,
some
las 8.
questions.
Yes, of course, if you have questions, whatever. Yes.
Not one question, but early in one of the photographs of when Frida was a child, there's a doll, a muñeca? A doll? Yes, way, way back.
Way back.
Yeah.
At the very beginning. At the beginning.
Almost at the very beginning.
Frida's photograph? No.
It was a photograph of her holding a doll.
Oh yes, with the family, every family pictures that you have too.
But it
Frida
was
has a
here,
doll.
no?
It was here, yeah.
I collect antique dolls, so I recognize it as a German doll. Is that still in your family?
Really? A ver, podemos buscar la foto.
The doll.
Esta foto que tienen el mismo día con tu papá.
It's at the beginning. That's a good detail, the doll here.
You just there, yes.
Yes, maybe a German doll, of course, but my grandmother was friend to the director of the German school. And in the German school, year by year, they make kind of bazaar in Christmas. And I do, when I was a child, had German dolls because they sell it in the German school. That's why. But it's interesting that you tell me that because I didn't know that the doll was German. Now today everybody knows something new.
And it's much older. I mean, it's like a turn of the century.
Yeah. And how do you know you are German?
Long time ago, but I've collected dolls since 1972. The old,
That's
old.
why. Okay. So thank you for that information.
I just
Palomita el día de hoy. We learned something.
But it was not in your family. This doll.
No. And in the photograph where my father appears with a bear and a little camarita, I think that there is a photograph of Frida with the same bear when she was a child. Yeah. So I think that bear maybe is still in the house. Yeah.
Such a sweet picture.
Okay. Anyone else in the back? Question?
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
So how, this is totally unrelated, but how did the movie Frida Kahlo represent your family? Was it accurate? Because I feel like the photography portion of it was just a very small fraction of the movie. Was that an accurate representation of your family, or?
Well, for me, it's
So Carissa's question is about the movie Frida with Salma Hayek, how accurate that
well,
was.
for me, it's very difficult to answer that because it's difficult to see your family represented in a film because I have my own movie in my head, so it's not like I imagine the story, no. But also I was talking to Doe in the at midday. And I was saying that sometimes it's like difficult, for example, these photographs that I found at the Smithsonian of my father being a boy, no? And it's like that photo should be in a photo album in the house, in a family house, but it's in a collection, blah, 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 no? But so it's not easy to make an opinion that it's okay, because it's the vision of another person about the family. And at the same time, I liked very much in that movie, the photography of Rodrigo was incredible, and so whatever. But it's let's say Hollywood movie, no, with a little bit sex, a little bit drama, a little bit love.
Since you are talking about sex, you told me something about... No, because she told me a history. Remember, Frida Kahlo has been profiled as very lover, bisexual, all this sexual activity. You told me a story that cannot be.
Well, that's my opinion. And here we have a great expert on Frida Kahlo. But something that I think that people do not notice when they go to the Blue House is that Diego Rivera has his own room and Frida his own room. They don't sleep together, first of all. Then, if I make accounts in my mind, and she had so many surgeries during her life. I have had surgeries, and I don't know, if you had a surgery in your life, you know that at least 40 days without sex. So, make an account, ¿no? 37 operaciones de a 40 días. Por operations, so I don't know. That's a lot. So I don't think that it was. No. It's not the sexual activity what matters. It's that she was very needy, and she needs a lot of love, and she was someone very. ¿Cómo se dice? I think sometimes I am like that. You know? Sometimes it's like I always want to touch everybody and to hug everybody, and maybe people do not like that, but it's a way of being. No sé, ser cariñoso, ser afectivo. Y ella and she used to need that. So the story when it turns like so sexual, I think it's not like that. Not even in Diego, eh? Not even in Diego. Diego, we were talking about that with my friend Solomon, and Diego wants to paint. He was a workaholic. And Juan Coronel once told me that Diego Rivera was in one hand with a brush, and in the other, the bocadillo, to eat, because he eats while he was painting. That's why he has such a big production of murals and pintura de caballete, dibujo, hacía portadas para libros, book illustrations, collect pre-Hispanic figures, design museum, he was crazy, eh? Writes about photography, about art, about politics. He was in everything.
So he dies in 1957, and you are born 3 years later. Diego Rivera.
Yes, I was born in
60 May 8.
Yeah.
And Diego Rivera dies in 1957 in November or September? December.
And now there is a very interesting exhibition in Mexico City about Emma Hurtado, who was the last wife of Diego, and it's interesting with a lot of documents, and so if you are going to go to Mexico, maybe you can see that also.
Just one comment. I am a translator, and I had the honor to translate a book about Frida. It's a children's book about a children's book. Una traductora, soy traductora profesional, y me pidieron, I'm sorry,
Hacer una traducción
de un libro de Mariana, la hija de un arquitecto. Que tan cierto, es una historia bellísima, porque Mariana fue a tomar clases de pintura con Frida, a la casa de Frida. Mariana is the daughter of an architect who was a client of, he was a client of Frida's. He used to order portraits from Frida. Murillo. Yes, yes.
I don't know if Frida gave lessons to Mariana Murillo Safa. No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Wow, that was so much forward over.
The students who went to the house to have lessons were Arturo García Bustos and Monroy and Estrada y Fanny Rabel. But those were the ones who are known as the Fridos.
No, she was a little girl. And this book was written by someone who has worked in books from different artists all over the world for kids.
Yeah, the Murillo Safa were clients. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like a book on recipes called Las Fiestas de Frida. No, Frida didn't cook an egg, nothing. But the recipes were from Lupe Marin, who was a great cooker, and she was the wife of Diego Rivera before Frida. And so the recipes in that book are from Lupe Marin. But if you make a book and you try to sell it as the recetas of Lupe Marin, nobody will buy it. But you put la receta de Frida, then it's
like Frida's.
It's exactly, it's the same as Frida's father. No?
Tonight, Cristina, is about you. It's not the great niece of Frida Kahlo. No. It's Cristina Kahlo.
Very, very. Bueno.